The Madison school shooter allegedly used the online gaming website called Discord, notorious for attracting criminals and glorifying shootings and mass killings. We're going to learn more about her and in the days ahead, but New York Mayor Eric Adams is connecting the dots on the violence coming from our youth.
Our children are being radicalized, and we better deal with the radicalization of our young people.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. The idea of age limits for social media use, I know a lot of libertarians say, oh, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. Well, we as parents have to realize that screens are literally rewiring the brains of our kids. And you all know what the angle thinks of recreational weed. Legalization, normalization has been and continues to be a nightmare for our young people. What can it trigger? Psychosis, paranoia, even bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which are all on the rise. Even Elton John recently chimed in, calling legalization one of the greatest mistakes of all time. And of course, we would be quite remiss in not focusing on the faith angle or the lack thereof, especially declining church attendance and a sense of community that often goes along with church attendance. Well, we can thank the boomers for that. Their parents probably took them to church regularly, but at some point, they got too lazy or jaded to keep it up. That is to the detriment of their kids and their grandkids. Being young and hopeless is not normal. Allowing your children unfettered access to the internet, I know it's hard, parents. Believe me, I struggle with this as a parent of teenagers. But to just give them unfettered access is just stupid and dangerous. It's a nightmare. The dark web exists to lure your kids into a hole of isolation. So don't help them. Business leaders, faith leaders, yeah, parents, and yes, elected officials all have to be working together here. In the end, this is not about politics. This is about common sense. And that's the angle. Joining me now is Dr. Chloe Carmichael, a clinical psychologist, and Pastor Corey Brooks, CEO of Project Hood. Dr. Carmichael, let's start with you. How big an issue is this today? Violence, young people, and normalization of it?
Yes, as you said, Laura, we almost really can't overstate it. And you touched on so many important components. It's such a sweeping issue. You know, to your point about the loneliness and the emptiness in our society, I think that also actually breeds a narcissism. And that connects to what you were saying about the decline of religiosity. When young people are not going to church, they're not only losing that sense of community, they're oftentimes losing a sense of moral code, and they're also losing a sense of humility. That's why you'll very rarely hear the American Psychological Association talk about it, but religiosity is actually strongly associated with mental health. And it's not even any one particular religion. It's the act of going to a house of worship and humbling yourself and subjugating yourself to a moral code bigger than you. And when we have these, young shooters that are being glorified in these, Marxist university echo chambers, where everything from the university to the social media to even Elizabeth Warren is, practically validating what and celebrating this violence. When you have those empty, lonely, narcissistic people, it can just be a code for disaster.
Well, we see, the Boston Globe back in June did a piece about this. Teens who kept their faith seem to be less depressed and lonely than their secular colleagues. Pastor Brooks, look, all hope is not lost. You're seeing a big revival of faith on college campuses and some high schools across the country. We've covered this on the angle, but you're dealing with this on a daily basis with young people. And again, as Dr. Carmichael said, that isolation that so many of them feel while they're connected 24/7, they're lonelier than ever before. What is the most important component to this?
Well, you're absolutely right. And what we're experiencing all across America, specifically here in Chicago, I see it every single day, where you see the seeds of evil being planted in the hearts and minds of young people all across America. And because of that, these different influences, whether it's social media or education, they're pushing policies where there's victimhood and systems of oppression that seem to be overwhelming them, leading them to giving up their responsibilities, leading them to hopelessness, leading them to anger, resentment, which all manifests in violence. And we see that on the south side of Chicago.
I think social media for teenagers is a complete nightmare. I'm sorry. I know people like doing dances and it's fun and funny, but the brains are just not able to take it. And Dr. Carmichael, how much is fatherlessness part of this equation for so many young people, or parents who are maybe connected and even privileged but checked out of parenting?
Right. It's the lack of family values. The fact that so many young people across America have this lack of family values. They're not living a life full of principles. Promoting moral discipline has gone out the window. We have to rebuild the family structure. We have to restore faith and moral values. We have to make sure that we promote personal responsibility.
Yep.
And until we do that, we're going to continue to see these violence acts all across America.
Well, Doctor and Pastor, both of you, thank you so much. Obviously, we're going to continue to cover this.